Packages. I'm Matthew Phillips, that's my Twitter.
I'm Richard Hicks. You can get me on Twitter at @scriptmonkey_, because someone else nicked @scriptmonkey.
Okay, so a bit of background on the talk. I went to BSides Las Vegas 2011. I went to a talk by Dave Kennedy, Relic. His talk was called Using the Teensy for So Much More. So the Teensy, for those that don't know, is a small USB-based microcontroller. So you've got the 18 mega chip on, it's sold by pjrc.com. But Dave's talk was about using the Teensy to type faster than a human can to quickly inject code onto a system. As you can see in the lower right, I'm in a white t-shirt, sat in a really good place, which was fantastic for when he was throwing out 3 Teensies. I managed to catch one. Afterwards I spoke to Dave, asked him, at the moment we're using the Teensy to inject data, the HID device, just to inject data. Can we use it to capture data? He wasn't so sure. Well, as far as I'm concerned, challenge accepted. Okay, so lots of problems with lockdown systems is that we can't export data. There's no USB storage, there's no CD burning, there's no internet, and there's certainly no mobile phones. Okay, so a bit of the research. So after BSides, back in 2011, I thought, well, let's see what this Teensy can do. So the first thing I did was plug 2 USB keyboards into a computer, push caps locks on one, and it's updated on the other one. You can see the LED flashing on the second keyboard. So the second thing was that can we control this state on the computer? Yeah, so a bit of software, you can download lots of software packages to control the caps lock state. So that works. The final thing to do was to check if the Teensy can record these states. Good news, yes it can. So quickly threw a bit of a dev kit together here just to see that the Teensy can follow the num, caps and the scroll lock states. So our solution would be, if we can get the Teensy into the site, we can use it to capture data, we can use it to export data from the system. So this isn't our work here, this is Iron Geek. We didn't have time to quickly put it together ourselves. Basically here he's got a Teensy inside a mouse with a USB hub, so it'll function as normal. You put the cover back on it, just a normal mouse. It's easy to carry, it's unsuspicious, and you can get these into lockdown buildings, maybe via a cleaner route.
So, as we covered so far, keyboard lock states will broadcast signals. Teensy capable of reading them, can hide them in objects. Many questions. Can we get something programmatically to signal it? Tap in caps lock to represent data on a system is going to take forever, and it is probably going to be suspicious if you're just standing there when you're not meant to be there. 2, if we can signal this, how do we control it? How do we get the Teensy to understand what the computer's saying? And 3, right, brilliant, we've just recorded some ones and zeros onto the Teensy. How do we turn that back into what we just read? So we're going to need to use a programming language. So first off, let's look at some compile stuff, C++, C# type stuff. Fantastic. Probably does this and probably does it at a high rate as well, toggling keyboard state. But the problem is lockdown systems, execution arbiters, software restriction policies, things like that won't work. You can't run them. They're not on the whitelist. You can't run custom exes. Okay, so now we're down to the most popular software out there, Java. Massive market penetration on loads of computer systems. Maybe shouldn't be, but it is. You'll find it everywhere. Gets around the execution arbiter thing because often you'll find C program files java.exe is allowed, which allows you to run any Java bytecode. Problem is, this thing resulted in so much keyboard rage. I spent 5 hours one evening wondering why on earth it was latching. So for some reason I hit caps lock, Java goes, yeah, caps lock's on. Hit caps lock off, nah, caps lock's on. Start hammering it, caps lock's still on. So it's not reliable, so we'll get rid of that. Scripting languages, alright, fair enough. Python, unfortunately, you're not going to find it on our target machines. Our target machines typically are going to be Office-based machines. You're going to find Python on them, maybe if they're a developer. Things like PowerShell, you're going to run into things like you can't run PowerShell scripts. I know there's ways around it by many cleverer people than I am, but either way, we eliminate that. So what are we left with? Microsoft Office. Macros. Just so happened I did a bit of work on some local lockdowns. Got told you can't run macros. I wrote a nice big blog post on, yes I can run macros. Even if they require digital signing, I could sign them myself because you've left the executables open. Fantastic. So we use a bit of VBA to do the stuff, and it'll access the keyboard and it'll toggle the keys just fine. So we just solved the issue of getting a host to do programmatic, so grab a file, convert it, toggle keyboard. How do we get it to talk properly? Well, the teensy, if we drop it as a cleaner walking in through a building, for example, or a persistent device that we just leave there, we want it waiting there. We don't want it collecting every single keystroke or every single time you hit caps lock. So we need to tell it, you need to start listening now. So we configure a special knock. So if you see, in our case, scroll lock, toggle 3 times within 5 seconds. You use your scroll lock nowadays, especially 3 times in 5 seconds. It'll switch into a listening mode, and all of a sudden start recording the outcome of whatever numlock is set to. So send a special lock, teensy's in record mode, set the numlock to identify the first bit, 1, numlock on, 0, numlock off. Yeah. We clear caps lock. Now caps lock and scroll lock are control signals we use to pass control between the macro and the teensy. Clear caps lock, I'll explain this a bit later on. Set scroll passes control to the teensy. Teensy sees scroll activate. Right, I'm going to record the contents of numlock. I'm now going to unset my scroll lock because I've done my job. I'm going to set caps lock to make sure the macro goes, yeah, alright, it's my turn. Right, I'll grab the next bit of data, go back up to step 4, set scroll, set cap, unset, that kind of thing. Carry on to end of file. What do we do when we reach the end of a file? Because we'll just keep on recording. Well, we'll just put something in there we won't often see. So in our case, we just shoved in the binary representation of FF in hex to signal end of file. So when we see a block of 1s, we know to take 8 1s off the top, and everything from the beginning of the capture to those 8 1s is our data that we're interested in. It allows us to pick up the teensy at any point in the future.
Right, so we're going to quickly set the scenario. We're in a controlled and lockdown room environment, remember? The attacker wants to steal data off one of these lockdown systems. Okay, I'll apologise for the video, and this was done Monday last minute.
Sorry for me.
And we were told to wear balaclavas in it. Unfortunately, I didn't have a balaclava, so I've resorted to some camouflage. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm placing a micro SD into the attack box. I'm just going to open up the data file on our micro SD just to show us blank. Here we are, opening it wasn't blank, so I quickly delete the file, save it, and reopen it to show that it's empty. Quickly eject the micro SD, pop it back into the teensy, which you remember is the HID device. The teensy, we've added a micro SD reader to it. So we are putting it back in the micro SD reader. Then what we do, the attacker will send a malicious email to the victim. In this case, it's our malicious Word document. We'll send it to the victim, which happens to be Rich in this case. The macro is set to auto-run when you load the Word document. It'll allow you to continue using the Word document in the background. So here's the email. I don't type this fast, we've sped the video up.
Give away all your secrets.
Okay, so then what we do, the attacker will, as a cleaner, hide the teensy in the mouth. They'll plug it into the victim system. The victim then turns his laptop on, none the wiser, starts using the box. One thing to note is this won't show up in Device Manager as a USB mass storage device or anything like that. It will just show up as a keyboard or a mouse. So, the victim opens our document. We'll just quickly show you here. We'll save the document to the desktop. We do move it to My Documents. If you see quickly when we open my computer, there are no extra drives. This is real-time, mine. This isn't sped up.
Yeah, I am that quick.
Okay, so the macro is now running in the background. It is toggling caps locks quite fast to export data. We'll quickly show you here. See the caps locks flashing? So that's real-time. That's the speed that we're exporting data. You can continue to read the document. This happens to be the BSides talk list for today. So we sped this up. So the victim now replies to the attacker. He doesn't have to do this. It's just an extra step for us recording. He's finished reading the document. Probably should have put that a bit bigger, but in hindsight. Okay, so the victim then has finished his day at work. He leaves his system. The attacker, which is the cleaner, comes back into sight and runs off with the teensy device, the hid device again, with the micro SD. We'll take the micro SD out of the teensy, put it into a little reader, and throw it into our PC to find out what's in the text file. So we're opening the text file. As you can see at the end, maybe not because it's quite small, there's a stream of ones at the end. We know not to include them as that's our end of file. We'll copy the ones prior to that, copy the noughts and ones prior, and throw them into a binary to ASCII converter. And
in a second.
yeah, give it a second, we'll make it bigger. But there's the exported data from a system unknown to the user. The user won't know this whilst it's happening.
It works. No, next slide.
So, to wrap up, this can work with any file type. We haven't really improved on the demo speed. It's something that can be improved on, but you are limited by the HID protocol. The UUID that the teensy registers as, when you plug it in, can be changed to replicate anything. So, for reconnaissance, you can pick up a Microsoft mouse that they've already got on the site and clone that one. Others have now done this at CrestCon. A couple of weeks back, someone mentioned that this is possible. We submitted our talk before we even heard this.
But we did it back in 2011.
Yeah, but we never demoed it. Right, so are there any questions?
What's the fastest bit rate you can get over?
We knew this question would pop up.
Yeah, we don't know.
So we haven't had time. We've basically been making sure the code works and not speeding it up, just for demo purposes, proof of concept. And that was just a simple text file. We've tried it with bitmaps. Bitmaps do work a little bit, but the code will be...
Bitmaps go across fine. They just take about 40 minutes to transfer. So because of the delays you've got in there.
So your challenge is the transfer speed, the macro speed, so you could
It's
extract a hash and then set that all.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the macro can be programmed to do whatever you want. So, for example, I was going to program it to zip up the entire user profile directory that it could access and then try and export the zip. But that video would have been 20 minutes long.
So the problem we've got is as soon as the user closes the Word document, the macro will stop running, the data stream's not going to be exported anymore. We could have took it a step further and tried to inject into memory and then start doing this in memory, but we didn't have the time to get that going, but it's all possible.
Is there a clock on the teensy?
There is a clock on the teensy. I think it can, it's not a real-time clock, but when it turns on, it will record milliseconds from when it's plugged in. I think it will last 50 days and it'll cycle back round to 0.
Have you looked at writing the script via the HID device before, rather than injecting it via phishing with an email?
So Dave Relick's talk was, which I mentioned at the start, which is where he injects data. We did think that was an option, but obviously when you're injecting data on a system, it's a user, if he suddenly sees VBA pop up and all this code typing up, he's going to be a bit alarmed. We wanted to do it more stealthily, a bit more anonymous, so they weren't able to know anything's going on.
Admittedly, that email obviously sent via the internet. We could have just sent it off via the internet, but I worked on a job actually 2 weeks ago where they had email access. The email was very monitored. They could get Word documents in, but they couldn't send Word documents out unless they were part of a special group. So it would have worked perfectly in that scenario. In fact, it did. Scared the hell out of them. Haven't really looked into recommendations to make to fix the problem yet, but.
But I think that's our time anyway. We'll cut into somebody else.
Right, boys, thank you very much.